Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather Baldwin McDowell, and I am an intellectual property rights practitioner. I'm also a public relations practitioner. I am here today to talk to you about the business of music, intellectual property rights as it pertains to the songwriter. So I would like to let you get to know a bit about me. And one of the ways that you could get to know about me is for me to let you know how I feel about music. And one of the things I tell all my friends who know me well is that if music was a guy, I would get on both knees and propose to it and marry him because that's how much I love music. But there are other people in Trinidad and Tobago who are songwriters who very clearly say how wonderful music is. And I would like to quote today from one of my favorite guys. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but his work will always be here, and that is the Mighty Shadow. And I will just quote quickly, and I'm sure you would recognize it by the time I'm finished. Music sweet, music sweet. The one who invented music is got to be terrific. That will be the one who created the sun, rivers, and seas. Music fills the world with happiness, plenty sweetness, and togetherness. Music has no friend, no enemy. Everybody could dingole. And that is from the late, great Mighty Shadow. And I think he captures very, very well what music means, not just to me, but to many of us, and he's one of our own. Today, I want to keep this as interactive and as engaging as possible. I have been told by friends of mine that I make IP sexy. So you will judge for yourself, because I am just so passionate about this that I will let you know that when I was actually doing this, preparing this presentation, I felt like a little child at Christmas, and I was so happy. And I must thank MusicTT for giving me this time with you. And I want to specifically say thanks to Mariella Digans, because she has been just amazing. So let's get going here. Let's look at the areas we want to cover. Copyright and the songwriter, the role of collective management organizations, also called CMOs, that's the acronym, how to monetize the copyright in your works, and works being your songs as a songwriter, melodies, lyrics, and that is very important to make money, to be able to economically exploit your works, and why creatives need to self-educate. And finally, the last part will be on key takeaways. So let's get started. Some time ago, I wrote this, so I'm just quoting a short part of it. It's called What's in a Note. A musical note affords the creator one of the most basic tools with which to create some of the most memorable compositions around the world. Creation in any genre is a means by which a society can inspire, inform, and rivet the attention of listeners of all ages. Such creations have a language of their own. Whether you share the same roots or not, anyone can be connected to the emotive impact of a musical note. Just for a few seconds, let us try to imagine a world in which musical expressions were outlawed and a note could not be used to create a musical masterpiece. That to me is unimaginable. So what's in a musical note? Everything. And after that, I would like to restate, you don't need to need a bulldozer to become a composer. Every little fact or thought, may help to construct the melody. And again, that is courtesy of one of my favorite people, the late great Shadow from Dingole. So part one of this presentation, deals with copyright and the songwriter. So let's talk about who is a songwriter. How do we define a songwriter? A songwriter refers to an individual who composes words or lyrics, or music or melodies, or both, in particular but not exclusive to popular songs. And it is very important for us to talk about why is a songwriter important to society. Songwriters are important to society because of their ability to use their words or music to inspire, inform, and rivet the attention of listeners of all ages. The creations of the songwriter have a language of their own. Whether you share the same roots or not, anyone can be connected to the emotive impact of the compositions. At any moment in time, songwriters are able to satisfy the emotional needs of their listeners and act as a historian who captures the events of a period in time. In years to come, people will know what the impact of COVID-19 was through the compositions of songwriters. On a lighter note, I always find this very amusing. On a lighter note, if anyone, man or woman, is challenged, is romantically challenged, there are an abundance of compositions to assist one. One that comes to my mind is by Ken Marlon Charles, who most of us know as KMC. That is his song, Soul and Fire. In this song, KMC says, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you smile, the way you look at me, girl, I'll do anything for your love. You make my day, you make my night. I've got to win your heart. You set my soul on fire. To me, this is pure poetry from our own KMC. I am sure many folks have thanked him over the years, and if you want to, you can go back on YouTube and you can look at the entire video because it is just amazing. So now let's continue talking about our songwriter friends. A lot of songwriters have dual roles. They are songwriters, singers, or performers as well. It is not unusual to have in our midst songwriters who are also singers or performers. Again, locally, I can cite David Rudder, Kitchener, Nadia Batson, and internationally, we have Bruno Mars, Shaggy, Alicia Keys, and the list goes on. The duality of purpose comes in handy when performers no longer want to perform. Great music lasts forever, and songwriters' legacies continue long after they're taken into music heaven. Now, on to intellectual property and how it applies to songwriters. It is important, we are looking here now at the importance of securing ownership of copyright in your compositions or works. From time to time, you'll hear me say works, but works also applies to your compositions, whether they're lyrics or melodies. So I want to get that very clear. And just in case you missed this presentation, you can find it on MusicTT's YouTube channel, so you can feel free to go back and listen to it in its entirety. So intellectual property shall include rights related to literary, artistic, and scientific works, but we will be looking mainly at the literary and the artistic works. It also includes trademarks and service marks. But the reason I mentioned trademarks because that will come in a little later. And it also covers all other rights resulting from intellectual activity in the literary and artistic fields. So what is copyright? We hear a lot about copyright. Even way back when, some of you may not know this, but when there was a show called Bonanza, which was way back when, probably in the 70s, there was an episode where Charles, this man, was very upset because a guy was printing his books in wherever Bonanza was, and he was not getting any money from it. So his book was economically exploited through piracy. So let us look at what copyright is. Copyright law is a branch of the part of the law which deals with the rights of intellectual creators. Copyright law deals with particular forms of creativity concerned primarily with mass communication. That is, when it is going to be passed on, reproduced, duplicated to several people all around the world, or within your particular territory. You should be given permission for that. It is concerned also with virtually all forms and methods of public communications, not only printed publications, but also such matters of sound and television broadcasting, films for public exhibition in cinemas, etc., and even computerized system for the storage and retrieval of information. And this part with computerized systems for storage and retrieval of information, because now everything is being done virtually, and that becomes important. That becomes very important. Copyright deals with the rights of intellectual creators in their creation. Now, by that means creative people, and it is creations of your mind. Most works, for example, books, your songs, exist only once they are embodied in a physical object. In other words, if I come and I think up a theme for a song, but I do nothing about it, it's just in my head, I can't copyright that. But some of them exist without the embodiment in a physical object. For example, music or poems or works, even if they are not, or even before they are written down by a musical notation or words. Once you can prove that it is your creation by in some way embodying it, you can have it copyrighted in your name. Copyright law, however, protects only the form of expression of ideas, not the ideas themselves. And I think this is what I'm trying to bring home to folks. You cannot copyright an idea, because 10 of us could be in a room and we could all come up almost with the same idea at the same time, but it is who is able to bring it to market first, who is able to put it in some form of expression that they could claim ownership of that particular idea. You cannot, I want to emphasize that, you cannot copyright an idea. The creativity protected by copyright law is creativity in the choice of arrangement of words, musical notes, colors, shapes, and so on. Copyright law protects the owner of rights in artistic works against those who copy, that is to say, who take and use the form in which the original work was expressed by the author, and that is without the author or the creator's permission. It is property. You cannot take my car without my permission and drive it all over the place and change the color and do whatever you want unless I expressly said you could. So it's the same thing when you own a song, whether it's in lyrics or melody or whatever. You cannot just, people should not, even though they try to, just take your music and do whatever you want, because it's an intangible asset. Because you can't touch it or feel it, it doesn't mean it is not property. Copyright protection from the perspective of the songwriter makes sense only if the songwriter can get benefits from their compositions. In the absence of publication and distribution of musical works and the enabling of such publication and distribution, no benefits will be gained. So this is an essential role of copyright in developing countries such as ours. Now, I want to look at the life of copyright. That is where we talk about economic rights, because we have two main types of rights in copyright. We have economic rights and we have moral rights. We'll get to moral rights a bit later. But economic rights have a time limit. That is the ability to earn money, to monetize the value of the copyright in your compositions. So economic rights have a time limit, which can vary according to national law. In those countries which are members of the Berne Convention, the time limit should be equal to or longer than 50 years after the creator's death. Longer periods of protection may, however, be provided at the national level. You should contact your National Intellectual Property Office to find out more, or you can visit the World Intellectual Property Organization, LEX, to consult with national legislation. The life of copyright is based on reciprocity. So therefore, if in Trinidad, the life of copyright after the death of the composer or the creator of the music is 50 years. So if we give 50 years of protection of copyright after the death of the songwriter, see, and in the United States, they give 75 years. In the United States, a Trinidad composer or songwriter will only get 50 years because it's done on reciprocity. So if we only give 50, you will only get coverage for 50 in the United States or other countries that might have a longer period. Now, I don't want to be morbid here, but if a songwriter dies in 2020, sometime in 2020, the 50 years will start from the 1st of January 2021. And as far as I understand, if he or she co-wrote a song, that 50-year period will start when the last person who was part of the songwriting team passes. So the copyright can go on for a good bit longer than the 50 years if more than one person was the songwriter on a particular song. Now let us look quickly at moral rights. We talked about economic rights, and there are several economic rights, your ability to distribute, to reproduce, to use your music in songs, in advertisements, to have live performances of your works, etc. But there are also moral rights in your work. Under the Berne Convention, which is one of the oldest pieces of copyright legislation, it requires member countries to grant to songwriters two main rights here. The right to claim authorship of the work, that is to claim that I am the creator, I am the songwriter of a particular piece of music, lyrics, whether it's lyrics and melody or lyrics alone or melody alone. If I create that, I have the right to be named. In fact, if you go to a concert, for instance, on some of the programs, you will see under the piece of music that will be performed, you sometimes see composed by. Sometimes you don't, but you should have your name there. And it is also, as a moral right, it is a right to object to any distortion, mutilation, or other modification, or other derogatory action in relation to the work which would be prejudicial to the author's honor or reputation. These rights are generally known as moral rights of the songwriter or author and are required to be independent of the usual economic rights to remain with the author even after he has transferred the economic rights. And I want to explain something here. Moral rights, in addition to be named as the author, you also have the right to say, I don't want my music used in a particular way. For instance, if I am Muslim, I would not want my music that I have created used to advertise pork products. And that is my right. Because of religious beliefs, I don't want my music used in that way. I could also say that I don't want my music used in political settings for political conventions, rallies, whatever. I could say I don't want my music used like that. And if you try to use it like that, I can send you a cease and desist letter and ask you to stop, because it is my property and you don't have the right to use it in a way that I find offensive. So we look quickly at related rights, but here I'm not going to get into much about that because Fabian Alfonso will be dealing with that next week. So I'm not going to get too much into that, but these are rights related to or neighboring on copyright. These rights are generally referred as related or neighboring rights in an abbreviated expression. In our copyright legislation, which I must mention to you, was recently amended in the Senate first and then in the House, we refer to it as neighboring rights, but in other jurisdictions, it's referred to as related rights, but it's basically the same thing. It is generally understood that there are three kinds of related rights: the rights of performing artists in their performances, the rights of producers and of phonographs or in their phonographs, and the rights of broadcasting organizations in their radio and television programs. And this is important because remember I said earlier, there's a duality of roles where you have a number of songwriters who are also performers. So they are covered also. If you're a songwriter and a performer, like say in terms like Bruno Mars or John Legend, Alicia Keys, you will also be covered by copyright and also related or neighboring rights. And I hope I haven't lost anybody. A song needs to be performed by artists, reproduced in a form of records or broadcast by means of radio facilities. All persons who make use of literary artistic works in order to make them publicly accessible to others require their own protection against the illegal use of their contributions in the process of communicating the work to the public. Thus, the need was felt for special protection for performers, producers, and phonographs, that's recordings, and broadcasting organizations. The performers felt that they would not only derive any income. If this didn't happen, the performers felt that they would not only not derive any income from such secondary use, but would also be placed in an awkward position of having to compete with their own recordings in respect of their employment potential for live performances in theaters, restaurants, cafes, etc. And recently again, with COVID-19 very much on all our minds, the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization recently enforced the Beijing Treaty, which gives further protection to audiovisual works, whereby if you are an artist and a songwriter, performer, and your concert, you did a live performance and it was recorded and you can access it on a platform like Netflix or so, you should still, in addition to the payment you would have been given for the live performance, you should be also able to earn income when it is being repeatedly shown on some platform like Netflix or YouTube or one of these platforms. So that is very good news for a lot of people given what is happening in our world today. Now we want to say, we have these rights under copyright, but could you imagine if, as a songwriter, you had to go to every radio station, every television station, every restaurant in Trinidad and Tobago and all around the world to have your rights protected so that you can get royalties from your fantastic creations? And I must say, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have amazing songwriters in any genre of music that you can imagine. So here comes collective management organizations, also called CMOs, collective management organizations. Collective management is the exercise of copyright and related rights by organizations acting in the interest and on behalf of owners of those rights. In this case, we are focusing on songwriters. The songwriter or the creator of a work has the right to allow or to prohibit the use of their works. A songwriter can consent to their works being performed on stage under certain agreed conditions. A writer can negotiate a contract with a publisher for the publication and distribution of a book. And a musician can agree to have performances recorded on compact disc CDs. These examples illustrate how owners of rights can exercise their rights in person. You can also have it streamed, etc. And in order to do this and to get maximum benefit from the economic exploitation of your works, you need someone who has the ability to have reciprocal agreements with other similar organizations that can police your work to make sure that you get as much coverage and economic returns from the exploitation of those works. But individual is still on to CMOs or collective management organizations. But the individual management of rights is practically impossible for certain types of use. An author cannot contact, well, I just said that, so I'm just saying it again. You cannot contact every radio station, and so we can move on from there. So rights, these are the rights under collective management. CMOs most commonly take care of the following rights: the right of public performance, music played or performed in discotheques, restaurants, or other public spaces; the right of broadcasting, live and recorded performances on radio, television, or live streaming; the mechanical reproduction rights in musical works, that is the reproduction of works in CDs, tapes, vinyl, records, cassettes, mini discs, or any other form of recording now that is here with us now or in the future; the performing rights in dramatic works, theaters, plays, because you can create music. A songwriter can create the musical score for a play or a movie, etc. The right of reprographic reproduction, that is for really literary works and musical works, because as a songwriter, you can write musical scores, and those musical scores have value, and if they're going to be photocopied or duplicated and sold, you should benefit from having your scores printed and distributed. Related rights, the rights of, as we said, the rights of performers, etc. Traditional CMOs, that is traditional, I want to emphasize in traditional collective management organizations, acting on behalf of their members, because you have to become a member in order for them to service your needs. It is up to you to choose the collective management organization that best suits your purposes. So they have the right to act on behalf of their members, to negotiate rates and terms of use with users, issue licenses, authorizing uses, collect and distribute royalties. The individual owner of rights does not become directly involved in these steps, but they are not supposed to be in any way work against the member. They are supposed to work in favor of the member. Now we look at one-stop shops. One-stop shops are a sort of coalition of separate CMOs which offer users a centralized source where authorization can be easily and quickly obtained. As far as I know, we don't have that in Trinidad, but there's a growing tendency to set up such organizations on account of growing popularity of multimedia productions. Productions composed of creative forms, several types of work, including computer software, etc., which doesn't really apply here, but I'm just saying it anyway, which require a wide variety of authorizations. So rather than having to skip, hop, and jump all over the place, there are places where you now have one-stop shops. But you can also have copyright, what we call copyright organizations that are hybrids that cover both copyright and related rights. So, as I said, you choose the one that you feel best fits your needs. Now onto the great part, how to monetize the copyright in our compositions. Because I have spoken, I love speaking, I love the entertainment industry, I love working with artists, I love working with songwriters and so. And it is amazing to me that we have such talent in this country. And there are people who write great music and it's in a drawer, or it's on their computer and they've done nothing with it. So it's like sitting down on a whole bed of diamonds and you're not minding them. We have no idea. It is scary to know that in Trinidad and Tobago, and not just here, we don't know what we have. And I like to use practical examples. If anybody, including myself, if you ask me, what do you have in your house? Can you tell me every single item you have in your house and what is the value of every item? I don't know. So my house probably has a lot of things that are worth something but I don't exactly know because I can't remember what it is and when I bought it and where it is. Just imagine you have a catalog of music sitting collecting dust or just on your computer and you have done nothing with it. That has value. So now we're going to look at how to monetize, how to make money from the copyright in your compositions. So one, the first thing you need to do is to join a collective management organization that best suits your needs to maximize exploitation of your economic rights. And I can't say this, I'm going to be very trini. I can't say this enough. Ensure that your compositions are properly registered with agreement on the division or split of ownership in the compositions. This is important for the receipt of royalties. Now, I want to stop here for a minute. When you create a song, remember, a song is property. It is an intangible asset, but it is property. Property has ownership. And we talk about split sheets or registration of the rights in the song through, I'll get that name just now. But anyway, what is important here is when a song is created, sometimes it is created by more than one person. So there must be an agreement on who owns shares. And the shares have to add up to, it's registered in our language in Trinidad, we talk about the registration of works forms or split sheets. Split being what percentage do I own in a particular creation composition. The split or the amount must add up to 100%. Therefore, each person, if there's more than one person involved, they must be very clear on what percentage of that composition they own. So when it's time to pay royalties, they know what percentage. If you own $500, they must know if 10% of that $500 is mine, if 20% is Mariella's or whatever. You must know what percentage of that composition you own, and that must be done up front, or else it can cause a lot of confusion down the road. Never, ever sign a split sheet without the appropriate percentages being there and agreed to. Don't ever sign a blank form, because that could have a lot of problems down the road, because people sometimes suffer from what I call some'zimers, not Alzheimer's, some'zimers, because they say things to you and you believe and trust what they have said, and then when it's signed on the dotted line, you say, but I thought you told me I would own 50% of this song, and then you see you own 10. And you sign a blank form, so just never do that. Then you need to file live performance documents with your CMO in a timely fashion. That is a little skewed now because of COVID-19, but this situation is not going to last forever, and we will at some point go back to live performances. But it is important to file those documents, because that is where you really make money. And I am sometimes very amused when people who do a lot, and when before COVID, who were doing lots of live performances, there's a time frame in which you have to file the documents, and they would say to me, gosh, I was just too busy. And I would say, well, if you're that busy, then give me the money, because that is money in the bank. So you need to file live performance documents with your CMO in a timely fashion, so that helps you to get your royalty payments. The next thing is, let us not only look at broadcasts and live performances. Let us go now and see how we can get our music, our song creators, our songwriters, let us get our music in film, in advertisements, on television, in movies, in video games. This is under what we call synchronization rights, and this will allow you to this can become a cash cow for songwriters, because it means your music is going to be synced into video or so. There are people who have retired on one song. I mean, it's not everybody, so don't get me wrong here. But if, I don't know how many people remember a song, I Got to Move It from Madagascar. That song was actually, the songwriter is Trinidadian, and he lives in the States, and that song made it into so many Madagascar films that he made a lot of money off of that song. The other thing is it gives you more visibility. So you have to use all avenues available to you to get yourself out there. You also have to consider merchandising ventures, if possible. You know, if you are a songwriter, performer, you can get t-shirts or any kind of memorabilia done that keeps you in people's mind all the time. You have to stay current as an artist, as a songwriter. People have to be aware that you exist, because sometimes in this business it's not easy and you're as good as your last song. So people have to know you're still there. So you have to find creative ways to keep yourself visible and in people's present mind. Then you have to look at collaborations as opportunities to expand your reach in other markets regionally and internationally. For example, you have Marshall Montano and Ashanti and Shaggy, and so you have now where John Legend just did a song, another song. This is his second one with Buju Banton, and there's talk that he will soon be doing one with Coffee. But the point about it is, we tend to look at the US market, but there are other markets too. Afrobeats are very popular now, Afrobeat music. So we start looking at the Nigerian and West African and all these other markets as well. We create music in Trinidad that could be used in Bollywood films. In Nollywood, Nollywood is the Hollywood of Nigeria. We can start seeing how we could make contacts and expand our reach out there, and also regionally. Branding, that is very important. Branding is a critical part of the music industry, and it is important that you begin developing a brand strategy at the beginning of your songwriting career. Whatever defines you should be protected. These can include, but are not exclusive to, catchphrases or even songs. And it's important that I just said songs, because recently trademarks and the transactions they support a valuable source of revenue. So we have in Trinidad already people like Marshall Montano who have trademarked their name, Bunji Garlin, all these people. But recently, Pitbull, who everybody knows, I think Pitbull did a song with Marshall Montano some time ago. Pitbull recently got a trademark for the yell that he makes. So Pitbull's yell was recently trademarked. So let me just warn you guys, if you want to use his yell, you have to get his permission, you have to pay him, you just can't go using it. And that just leads me to something else, sampling. When you use part of somebody's song or even Pitbull's yell, once it is a substantive part, that is, once it can be recognized when people hear it as belonging to a particular songwriter, composer, whatever, you need to get permission, and that person can then own part of this new song that you have created. If you use any part of his work that is, or her work that is easily recognizable as theirs. So I'm putting people on notice, because that can lead to a whole lot of trouble down the road if it is not done properly. CMOs will help you to a great extent. CMOs are very expensive to operate, especially in our Caribbean diaspora. Therefore, staffing is important in a CMO, but they cannot have all the staff that they need. So therefore, you need to help them to help you. Self-policing is important. A lot of us go on use social media, we use streaming platforms and so. So if you come up on your work being done in a way that you didn't even know about, and then you call your collective management organization, they never negotiated any terms and conditions which you would have to know about in advance, you can pursue it and get some kind of remuneration, or have the person stop using your work without your proper authorization. This is extremely important because piracy is huge. And all I want to state very clearly, and I'm sure by now you'll understand how passionate I am about this. All the copyright laws that apply to the traditional forms of using your music also apply to what is in terms of the new media and the internet and streaming platforms. And so it is just that it is becoming, with digitization, it is becoming more harder to police your work, but it can be done. So in the age of COVID, touring and live performances have been severely impacted. Therefore, a new normal has to be created to get your compositions out there using streaming platforms. Top streaming platforms are Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon Music, Unlimited. But there are others. Some people are also talking about it's time we start our own platform, streaming platforms here, because one of the challenges we have is the amount of money that goes outside of our region for music is nothing in comparison to what we get in. And that is because we have a healthy diet of foreign music. And trust me, I love foreign music, but I love my own music too. And I think COVID-19 has given all of us the opportunity to do a reset and start looking within ourselves and learning to appreciate more and more what is ours. And we have quality songwriters. I am saying this to you because I follow them. I follow music all over the world and I love to look for new people. But if you don't like what is yours, why should somebody external to your region appreciate it? So we have to start in every sphere, we have to start loving ourselves and loving what is ours and creating quality. We have to stop creating music for Trinidad and Tobago and the region. We have to create music for the world, which is one of the things Jamaica has done, and they have their issues with their industry. But the point about it is that it can be done and we can really grow. So, why should creative people self-educate? I'll give you a quick story. I worked for a CMO and I fell in love with intellectual property. So, what did I do? I started by doing the introductory program, which is free. The United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization has what they call a long distance learning academy. And the introduction to copyright and intellectual property is free. After that, you have to pay for the courses. There's a whole catalog of courses, which I will just mention later on, that you can subscribe to. And as a member of WIPO, as a signatory to the treaty, we as Trinbagonians, we get the courses at a cheaper rate. So let's say a course is 400 US, we can get it for like 150 US. We will not pay the full amount. I'm not sure what the actual rates are now. You can check that on their website. But you ask the question why creatives need to self-educate. Knowledge provides a songwriter with the tools to get the maximum value from the economic exploitation of their works. Self-teaching resources. Google searches. Google is your friend. Anything you want to know, you can go on Google and you will find it. Just make sure that the information, which will be of an advisory nature, in the same way what I'm saying to you is advisory in nature only. You must get it from a reliable source. Then you should go about attending music industry webinars or seminars or workshops. Yeah, I'm on now. Yeah, as I was saying, it is very important to self-educate, and you can, Google is your friend, but you must make sure that the information, which is strictly advisory, as I was saying earlier, which is the same thing with the information I'm giving you today, is strictly advice. In nature, it must also come from a reliable source. Also attend local music industry webinars or seminars, workshops. It pains me that very often I attend industry seminars, workshops, now webinars, and a lot of the people who I feel should be there are not there. I'll give you an example of something that happened to me. I was talking to a person who is involved in the industry. They don't know me. They're in management. I used to actually manage a band, a jazz band called Nightlife. I managed them for 5 years. And I'm speaking to the person, so I introduce myself and I say to the person, I am an intellectual property rights practitioner, an advocate. And the person asked me, what type of real estate do I sell? Well, I had to take a deep breath and I said, no, I don't do real estate. I said, you manage an artist? I said, well, what I do is I am trying to talk to you because with COVID, I'm reaching out to people in entertainment to see how I could render assistance to them with copyright issues, etc. So we need to know what's going on. We cannot depend, I tell people this is not an industry for godparents. You, as the songwriter, have to get stuff done for yourself sometimes, especially when you're new to the business. Also, in educating yourself from the beginning, you set a good foundation so that when you start to grow, you will not find yourself signing away your rights because you didn't understand what you were doing at the time. It is your job to know what is important to you in the exploitation of the economic rights in your work so you could get the full benefit. Also, I would like to say at this point, it is important for our financial institutions to also educate themselves about how creatives work and how they can have probably special loan facilities for people who are creatives, and to understand that the intellectual property, the copyright in their musical works have value, the catalog has value, and there are ways in which we can look at how to work out what the value of those catalogs are, so the catalog can be used as collateral. And I'll give a quick example of something that happened many years ago. David Bowie was the first person to float a bond issue using his catalog of music as a collateral to back the bond issue. And I know he's huge, but this is just an example. And what they did is for the 10 years, all the royalties that were earned from his catalog were used to pay towards the bond issue that he had put his name to. And after the 10 years, the rights went back to him and the royalties went back to him. So what we have to do is think outside of the box and make it work for us. I would also suggest that people go onto the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization website and look for the Long Distance Learning Academy and look at their catalog of courses and see which ones suit you as a songwriter. And you can start, as I said, by doing the first one, which is the introductory course, and that one is free. And then when you have to start paying, you look for the ones that best suit your knowledge need and your industry need. So these are the takeaways. If you remember nothing else, I want you to know your value as a songwriter, not just to yourself, but to your audience and society. You have the power. You are, in a sense, now don't get me wrong here, you are like a therapist. In this period of COVID-19, depending on what somebody's mood is, they can go onto YouTube or any platform, music platform, and find some piece of music that a songwriter has created that speaks to them in that way. I find myself early in the whole COVID-19 thing wanting to listen to Ken Professor Fillmore. And he was such an amazing creator. And I have to say, God rest his soul. And my only beef with that is we don't play enough pan music on our airways and in our media. That's another story. But I'm saying we have to know our value. People treat us the way we treat ourselves. And I hear young people in the business, young songwriters talking about hustle. If you see yourself as just doing a hustle, you're not going to get the respect that you're due. I think creative people are amazing. I think creative people are some of the most fortunate people in the world because they get paid to do something that they truly love. And when you see them perform on a stage as a songwriter, if you are not also a performer, the joy you would get from seeing an artist perform your work on a stage must be just so amazing. So you have to know your value, not only to yourself, your audience, but also to the society. You are not only a therapist, not certified, but you are also a historian. Because again, as I said, we can go back to songs from previous eras and we can know exactly what was happening at the time. And what comes to my mind is Rainorama by Kitchener. When you listen to Rainorama, you are aware that at that point in time, there was a polio outbreak in this country. And as a result, Carnival had to be postponed. And they actually thought it would have to be put off and people nearly died. So they decided to have Carnival in May. And of course, May is the rainy season. So on Carnival, Monday and Tuesday, rain came like a storm. That did not affect my trainees. They danced in the rain. And that is how Lord Kitchener did Rainorama. And he says, rain come and wash out mass in May. So when you listen to Rainorama, you know exactly what was happening at that point in time. You listen to Gene and Dinah. I don't know, I'm sorry, but I don't know who composed Gene and Dinah, but you understand when you listen to Gene and Dinah what was going on after World War II in Trinidad. And as I said, there are already a lot of songwriters who are creating music that talks about COVID. And in years to come, people will listen to those songs and they will know exactly what is happening. And in fact, Ricardo Drew, the other day I picked up on YouTube that Ricardo Drew has a new song where he's literally going crazy in his house because he has to stay home, and as a creator, he wants to be out there performing and so you have to find a different reset, a different way of doing things. The other thing, self-educate. Make sure you are never too old to learn, and now is a time when unfortunately the entertainment industry has been very severely impacted. So we have to learn to do things different, and it is also a time to reset and educate yourself. Take the time, create. A lot of people are creating right now, so there's going to be a lot of music coming out. And finally, I would like to talk about adapt to new circumstances. I have a saying, if you get lemons, you can suck the lemon whole day and be sour and angry, or you can get a jug, make lemonade, put it in a tall glass with ice and an umbrella and a straw, and sit on your back step and sip it and think of what wonderful things can I do. It's hard. I know now it's a hard time, but it's a time that we can look at a crisis as an opportunity. And yes, it is tough, but we will get through this and we can do better. So I would like to say thanks to MusicTT for affording me this time. Thanks to you for taking the time to listen to what I've had to say. And as again, if you want to see this presentation when you have more time and you can sit and appreciate what MusicTT is trying to do, you can go on their YouTube channel, and I would suggest that you go for part 1, which was done by the IPO office and talked about intellectual property in music. Then you could look at mine that I'm doing right now, and then you can look forward to Fabian Alfonso next week, where he will be looking at related rights and talking about producers and so. So you get a 3-part series that we have done, and you can save it somewhere so that you can go back and look at it at your leisure. So I would like to end my presentation by going back to one of my favorite local songwriters, the late, great, mighty Shadow. And again, this is how I feel about music, and this is how I know most of us feel about music. Music sweet, music sweet. The one who invented music is got to be terrific. That will be the one who created the sun, the rivers, and seas. Music fills the world with happiness, plenty sweetness, and togetherness. Music have no friend, no enemy. Everybody could dingole, and I hope we all understand that we could, COVID-19 or no COVID-19, we could find our way to dingole and do like the OJs, love music. Any kind of music, as long as it's groovy. We love, love, love music, and we love our songwriters. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, 2 questions. Okay, how do you contact you?
Oh, I have that here. I am on, you can contact me by email. My email address is heatherambaldwin@yahoo.com, heatherambaldwin@yahoo.com. I am on Facebook as IP Champion TT. That is a page where I put up a lot of posts to do with intellectual property. I'm also on Facebook as Heather Baldwin McDowell in brackets IP Champion TT. I am on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as Twitter at Annie Ball, and I'm on Instagram. So you can feel free to contact me, and on Facebook you could inbox me. If you would like to have a little chat with me, you could inbox me. So
Marty is asking, are CMOs and PROs the same thing?
PROs, Performance Rights Organization, yes. Performance, in fact, in England, in the United Kingdom, their CMO, one of their CMOs is called the Performing Rights Society, PRS. And there's a quick little history there where in Trinidad and Tobago, originally copyright was administered by the PRS, that is the Performing Rights Society of England. And in, I think it's 1984, it was decided, a brave move, to form COT, a collective management organization locally, which is the Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago. And a lot of the members of PRS transitioned and became members of COT. There are 2 other organizations, or some anti-TTCO in Trinidad and Tobago. So as I said, you choose the organization that you feel best suits your needs, but just remember, when you're choosing your organization, you need to choose one that could give you the greatest reach, that could be able to represent your work, not just within the region, but outside of the region as well. So some people did not move from PRS, and I know, for instance, of the islands, we have in Barbados, we have, is it COSCAP? We have JAM, oh gosh, I'm thinking what the one is in Jamaica. They have them in Jamaica. They have one for producers in Jamaica. They have ECHO. ECHO is for the Eastern Caribbean region. So throughout the region, we have them, and all over the world, we have ASCAP, we have BMI. Now, there's something that I should mention. They don't like doing this, but it's possible to have membership in more than one organization, CMO, if it does not represent, for instance, if you don't have a hybrid, that you are a songwriter and you're also a performer, so you want your rights represented for songwriting and also as a performer, then you can join two separate CMOs. Also, if you move out of the region and you move to North America or something, and you feel that you would like ASCAP or BMI to represent your rights as well, you can apply for what they call split membership. A lot of CMOs don't like it, but it can happen if you can put up a good case and you can get the permission from the organization that you belong to afford you split membership, or you can leave the organization and join another one so that they will then represent your rights. One of the things that I feel is very important for our region, our nation and the region, is to ensure that more and more of our music gets listed on the databases of the other CMOs who manage our rights, because we have their music, but in a lot of cases, they don't have our music. And I remember some time ago, a gentleman came from WIPO, and he was saying that I think it was one of the South African CMOs, and what they did is they got their music and they took it to some of their reciprocal agreement partners and gave it to them so that they could represent their members in a more fair and appropriate manner. So I feel that we have to be more proactive as well because the amount for small region, the amount of money, I don't have the exact figures, but the amount of royalties we pay outside of Trinidad and Tobago is far more than we get from external royalties that are paid for the use of our music.
I know you mentioned split sheets. What are the most common mistakes you find that is so avoidable for our songwriters?
As I said, split sheets or notification of worksheets are like, for want of a better usage, a deed to the property that you own in your copyright. And sometimes the partner is a co-songwriter and you all have a great relationships, but they know, they have a saying, my grandmother used to say, partnership could sometimes be a leaky ship. And partnerships sometimes work very well when not a lot of money is involved. But when money starts to be made, sometimes if proper business arrangements were not made from the beginning, remember we talk about doing your branding early, etc., it can lead to a lot of financial problems down the road, which could even end up in court and confusion. So what I am stressing is, do not ever sign a blank split sheet or a blank notification of works document saying that, well, the partner said, I will own 50% and he will own 50, or I own 25 and the other one will whatever. It must come up to 100. But when you after you sign the blank sheet, which you shouldn't, I want to emphasize, you must not sign a blank split sheet or notification of works sheet, because when you sign, you have signed it, and then you don't get the percentage you should. It becomes very argumentative and it can end up in court. The point about this is, as I said jokingly, but it's really not funny, some people, and I don't mean any disrespect for anyone who has relatives who are suffering from Alzheimer's, but some of us have sung. We remember things that suit us, especially when it comes to money transactions. So when money starts coming in and we feel that I should get a bigger piece of the pie, suddenly we forget what the arrangement was. The other thing that I would like to say is sometimes you hear music playing on the radio and it's very popular, and the author or the songwriter belongs to a collective management organization, but believe it or not, they haven't yet registered the song. They haven't done the split sheet or the notification of works document. That song that you're hearing that is so popular, it will be earning royalties, but the royalties will go into a suspense account because that is now an orphan work. They do not know who owns it, because the fact that Heather is singing it does not mean that Heather is the songwriter or has shares in it. So they need to know who owns it so that they can pay the royalties appropriately. The other example I would like to give quickly in terms of monetizing, the industry can be competitive, very competitive, and sometimes it can be vicious. As much as I love it, we have to be careful, but we have to weigh certain things. Collaborations are important. If you are an unknown songwriter and you team up with a known performer or songwriter, publishers are always looking for music for their artists. And sometimes they may approach an unknown songwriter because they like the particular song he or she has written and they feel it would fit in to the new album of that well-known performer. I'm not calling any names. And they approach the songwriter, and this is the deal. I am approaching you for Heather. Heather is the known. You are the unknown. We would like to use your song on her new album. However, because you are not a known songwriter, but we like your song, she needs to own a substantial part in the song. She hasn't written anything, but people know her. So, of course, that is very upsetting to the songwriter, the new songwriter, and they say, but it's my song. So they might say the split is, she will own 80% and you will own 20%. And right away the answer is, no, I'm not doing that. But this is your first rodeo, this is your first time out. And I am not saying that is fair, but it is put to you this way. Do you prefer to own 100% of nothing or 20% of a mega hit? So when you're first starting out, sometimes you have to make these trade-offs, because when that song takes off and becomes a mega hit, then people will say, but who is that songwriter? And you will start getting work because people get to know you and want to know you, and you will get work. So sometimes in the beginning, and I know of stories I've heard of performers in Trinidad where I just love Kes DeFontala, and I heard stories where Kes's mom would say, but at least you all could get some money to buy the outfits you wear, because they were performing for free just to get known. So that's a trade-off. But the point I'm trying to make is, most people don't wake up one morning and become famous and popular and start to earn money. So you have to pay your dues, but know your worth. Even when that is happening, still know your worth and do not let people abuse you. Do not let people abuse your talent, because your talent is your passport to economic well-being and to be able to have a family, to pay your bills, to go to take your kids to school if you have children, to earn other property, tangible property like real estate and so. So know your worth.